We have a commitment to the patient of today, and we have a commitment to the patient of tomorrow. We don't want to be treating pancreas cancer in 5 years the same way we're treating it today. So we have to find better ways to treat disease.
Hi, I'm Tim Ditloff. Welcome to the Quorum Leadership Podcast from Full Sail Leadership. Today we're with Dr. Doug Evans. Dr. Evans is the professor of surgery and chair of the Department of Surgery at the Medical College of Wisconsin. He received his general surgery residency at Dartmouth, followed by a surgical oncology fellowship at University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center. His clinical interests include treatment of pancreatic cancer and tumors of the endocrine system, and he's very devoted to his professional career to research and treatment of pancreatic cancer and inherited endocrine syndromes. Dr. Evans has co-authored over 400 journal articles, over 90 chapters within 8 books. He's delivered countless speeches throughout the world, recently in Australia and New Zealand in '99. And we always talk about sailing and leadership and how it pertains to those subjects of sailing. Doctor just got finished with the grudge race today, and I believe you took first today. So congratulations on that. And also, Dr. Evans just got back from Bermuda, where he raced the Newport to Bermuda race, and did fairly well in that race, I believe.
Yeah, we did. We were happy with it. We came in third in our section and 14th overall. So even though this is just a hobby, we obviously try to do well, and I think it pertains to why we're here today.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry about my voice. A non-COVID related little cough and upper respiratory infection, and I can assure everyone that I'm COVID negative. But anyway, Tim, great to be with you.
Well, thank you for your time. As I said earlier, it's been a pleasure getting to know you through the yacht club here, but not really learning about you until I even more deeply when I read your bio this morning, and I've heard many good things from some of our fellow members about your practice as they've even seen you. So thank you for your time. I know how valuable your time is as a physician, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we talk about business, leadership, team development, and we've asked some people that race to come in and talk about that. So first off, tell us about how you got interested in your specialty of pancreatic cancer and the endocrine system as a specialty.
I grew up in middle-class America in suburban Boston, and I thought about medicine late. It's kind of a long story. I was inspired by someone in college to think about medicine. I realized I couldn't jump high enough, and I couldn't dribble the basketball good enough to make that a career. So like many people in medicine, we wish we were athletes. And in any event, I was a Massachusetts resident. The cost of medical school was a huge issue. So unfortunately, I didn't get into the University of Massachusetts, which was my hope since the tuition was very low for an in-state resident. My next best option was really a very good medical school, but also expensive, Boston University. And my financial aid package included me directing undergraduate dormitories in the Charles River campus. So I had 2 huge dormitories while I'm trying to do well in medical school, and these 2 dormitories are rocking and rolling. Fortunately for me, across the street was the Leahy Clinic, which at that time was very famous for its liver, pancreas surgery, also endocrine surgery. I was able to get a part-time job at the Leahy Clinic and was able to then use their library. So it really was a salvation for my first 2-3 years of medical school. And that's how I then got interested in pancreatic cancer. Decided to do a fellowship in surgical oncology. We ventured down to Texas, and really the rest is history. Spent 20 years at MD Anderson Cancer Center. When Went there initially when it was a small, tiny research institute. It's now the largest cancer center in the world. And when our youngest son went to college, my wife and I said, should we think about an opportunity to potentially experience another part of the country? I was very much interested in running a department of surgery. The person who had that job at Anderson at the time was only 8 or 9 years older than me. And in Houston, which is the land of DeBakey and Cooley, doctors tend to work until they die. They don't retire. So I said, well, if I'm going to have a leadership opportunity, I probably will need to move to another institution. They offered me a job here at the Medical College of Wisconsin. They had just built a new cancer center at Frederick Hospital. Thought it was really a great opportunity.
So we talked about your surgical schedule and the rigors of that before. Performing surgery on Mondays and Fridays, I believe you said, and then potentially Wednesdays. How much are you in the classroom and how much are you researching these days?
Well, even though I work at the medical school, my commitment to education is largely in the clinical and the research arena. So I don't teach classes to medical students, and I run the Department of Surgery, which is now about 110 faculty members. We have about 60 nurse practitioners and PAs and a very large staff of everyone else that keeps the operation going. And I think what we've tried to do is build a great team. We've taken, if you will, the Moneyball approach to surgery, I think, and to making our department the best it can be. And I think when I visit other departments of surgery, and many of the people listening are probably are not involved in medicine. One of the things I look at is how many people in that department are from different cities. So, and I think that goes to their engagement with the department. I think I've learned, especially in Chicago, less in Milwaukee. It's quite true in New York and Boston. There are many people who they're not going to move out of that city. Their family's there, and they're not going to move. So they may be somewhat miserable at their job. But the question is which job within the city of Chicago will provide the least amount of misery, or the most amount of happiness. But I think here, one of the things I'm most proud of is we have very few academic surgeon scientists who are actually from Milwaukee or from southeastern Wisconsin. And that means that they're here because of the job. And that's the primary driver. Obviously, we're blessed with tremendous school systems, a beautiful city. So once they get here, they kind of get addicted.
So in the job market today, and obviously the physician job market is vastly different than most job markets. But it sounds like recruiting is a constant task within your...
Recruitment and retention, basically talent development. I want our department to be known to be the greatest department to start your career at. So we have a huge amount of effort involved in what we call faculty mentoring. When I first got my first job, basically I was a fellow at MD Anderson, and the chair of the department offered me a job, and I looked upon mentoring as space, opportunity, and protected time for me in the operating room. So I knew that I had block time, what we call block time in the operating room, twice a week. I had an office. I had, at that time, we called them secretaries rather than administrative assistants. I'm sorry about my voice, but that was everything I could ever imagine. Now the bar is much higher. We have to provide an entire mentoring experience for our young faculty members. So we have a whole mentoring committee, a whole science behind how do we build their career. And we've divided into a number of pillars, but we have the clinical pillars, how do we make them a better surgeon? We have the personal pillar, how do we orchestrate an environment so that they can be a successful researcher, a successful surgeon And also, if they're married, they're successful as a husband or wife, they're successful as a father or mother, they pay attention to their significant other. We try to balance work and their time off of work.
So how do you structure that mentoring program? How do you check in with them?
Number one, we have a committee. So we have a committee that's diverse across the entire medical center. And every new faculty member meets with that committee after they've been with us for 3 or 4 months. And we get into the serious weeds with them. So we go over exactly what they're doing Monday through Friday. How is each day organized? And then we go over what are we doing to promote them nationally. So for them to become competitive for jobs both at our institution and at other institutions, they need to grow their academic portfolio. They need to publish in their area of interest. They need to make sure that their research program is progressing. So we talk about that. We have specific strategy. If we have 2 or 3 faculty members who need to get into a specific national organization, well, the president or one member of that national organization will be an invited guest that year. We'll probably have them give a talk here at the Milwaukee Yacht Club, have a dinner to follow, but we're very strategic in how to grow their academic and their personal career. So if they're, for example, if we just recruited a very talented woman out of her fellowship as a breast cancer surgeon. So with her, it will be critically important that she makes certain milestones with regard to publishing papers and to doing clinical trials in her area of interest, which is breast cancer. We'll make sure that she's happy with Milwaukee, and we'll make sure that she's also being a meaningful member in the national societies that are critical for that specialty.
Wow.
So
one of the things I think about when I think about your profession, especially surgery, I can't imagine the stress of it all. And especially as you're working with younger physicians, learning the craft. We talk a lot about in our workshops of leaders and business owners really needing to get below the waterline, finding out what's going on in the people's lives that work for them. How do you help young physicians and surgeons manage that stress?
I would hope that there wouldn't be that much stress. I mean, I think that, and don't call me too overly opinionated about these things, but I try to take a very open-minded approach to all aspects of society and opinion, because I think what we try to do, for example, in the Department of Surgery, is have an environment where everyone feels comfortable expressing their opinion. And I think with regard to managing a busy surgical practice, which it can be stressful at times, a research aspect to one's life, which we require for everyone who works in our department. The way we phrase it is we have a commitment to the patient of today, and we have a commitment to the patient of tomorrow. We don't want to be treating pancreas cancer in 5 years the same way we're treating it today. So we have to find better ways to treat disease. I think one of the big stressors in today's environment, and many of watching this video may disagree, is the tremendous emphasis on work-life balance. And I think right now people try to separate work and life. And I'll tell you maybe a little personal story. And I definitely was guilty of working too much. Fortunately, I have a great wife who, for whatever reason, has decided to stay with me, and we have 3 great kids. But when I first moved to Houston, work was basically everything. I mean, it was a little bit fortunate that we had no family there. So when I had when I had time off, it was truly just our family. In 1999, my mother-in-law developed a brain tumor, the most common type of brain tumor, a glioblastoma. Unfortunately, she was in Boston at the time. She moved down to Houston and stayed with us from diagnosis until death. An amazing experience for our family. She lived with us, and our kids, who at that time were, I think our oldest daughter was in 8th or 9th grade. So, if we say 9, 7, and 5th grade or something like that. And they saw me managing, and one of the difficulties with brain tumors is seizures and other aspects to the disease like that. But they would see me managing one of her seizures at 2 in the morning on a Saturday night, and I'm trying to call a doctor, I'm in the field. At that point, I was, somewhat well known in town, but even me, I was having difficulty finding someone to help me manage my mother-in-law's seizure from a brain tumor. And I think it completely changed the way my family thought about my job. So prior to that, it would be occasionally common that I would be stuck in the operating room. I would miss a birthday. I would miss an anniversary. And my wife or my kids would get a little upset with me. After that year of caring for my mother-in-law, that has never happened again. I'll fast forward to when we first bought the J109 here in Milwaukee, and my daughters weren't married yet, so they would meet us in Chicago for the Verve Regatta every year. And so for those who don't know, it's one of 3 or 4 of the larger regattas in Chicago. My 2 daughters, very competitive. They wanted to know who was on the team. They had sailed with us a few times, so they knew every member on the team. And I got a fair bit of pressure for me to add another team member, and I'll get to that story in a second. But so I ended up adding a team member without checking with my daughters, which was a big mistake, and I think goes to the sometimes the decisions that a leader can make with regard to their team without informing them. And that's, such an important thing to think about. But anyway, on the way out to the race course, day 1, I had given my phone to Courtney, my oldest daughter, and she's driving the boat out because the race course is about 5 miles off of Chicago. I'm down below we're strategizing over which way we're going to go on the course and a few other things, and my phone goes off, and it's a patient. And so Courtney answers the phone and says hello, and says, "Is Dr. Evans there?" And she says, "No, but this is his daughter Courtney, and can I help you?" And the patient said, "Well, I'm a cancer patient, and I have this going on." And she said, "Well, I've been doing this for a number of years for my dad, and I can probably help you pretty well if you want to tell me what the problem is." But just going back to that experience with my mother-in-law, yeah. I mean, she was completely engaged with my job, with the importance of medicine, the importance of helping someone on a Saturday morning. And I would just leave the viewers with the idea that what I have tried to do is to completely integrate my work with my family, with anything I like to do, whether it be go to the gym, sailing. I'm going to leave here today and I'm going to run to work. Hopefully I have a pair of jeans in the car and see a patient, because I just want to check on that patient again before the end of the day. And I would argue there's almost no stress in my life because everything is integrated. I will get 3 or 4 calls between today and tomorrow. Today is a Saturday, tomorrow is a Sunday, from patients with various problems. And almost all of them have my cell phone number. Virtually no one abuses it. And I can help them in 5 minutes and avoid an emergency room visit or various other things. The second interesting aspect of that regatta was, so I added a person to the team that I didn't clear with my two daughters. And so, on the boats I sail, everyone has a job. And nothing good happens when someone tries to do someone else's job. There's just too many lines as you go over whether it's a halyard or a sheet or whatever, but there's too many of them, and everyone has to do their job. I think an old line that Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots, said, just do your job. Everyone has to do their job. So we had a pretty good Friday, and it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think we're in second place, and for a new boat, and we were really happy with where we were. And the first race on the second day, we're in first place, and we're going downwind to the downwind mark. So we have the spinnaker up, and then we raised the jib to because we were going to round the leeward mark. And the person I added on the team that day, we had in the what we call the pit. So he's managing the halyards, and we said, okay. So we got to the point where we were going to take the spinnaker down, and instead he lowered the jib halyard, created a slot between the sail and the headstay. The spinnaker went right through it. As I rounded, because I started to round up. It's a little complicated with all lines, but in any event, I had to basically sail to Chicago to get the sail down before. So we ended up coming in last place in that second race. So we had a third race we did well in. We come to the dock, and this is if I leave you with anything today, this is the greatest lesson of sailing and work. And so everyone is, it's traditional in sailing to maybe have a beer or something to drink when you get to the dock. So we got to the dock, people had a beer, and then they were going to go to the little party at the Chicago Yacht Club. And my two daughters are sitting there, and I soon realized that everyone had just gotten off the boat, but the three of us, I went to get off the boat, and they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I was going to get off the boat." And they said, "Hold on, we need to talk to you. Number one, did you realize that we came all the way out here from Chicago, even though we love you and we like spending with you, but we came all the way to Chicago to race with you. We certainly expected to win this regatta, and you added someone to the team, and you didn't talk to us about it." And, I've remembered that. This is probably now 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But I've told that to the people I work with, and especially for executives and people in middle and upper level management. You have to realize the importance that your decisions have on the people who work for you. Yeah. It's so important. When you change the times that you want people to report, or any aspect of their environment. Like, for example, in my world, I would never make a decision about how my clinic is run without talking to my nurses. Never. My nurse practitioners. That's their whole life there. In the operating room, I have two scrub nurses who stand next to me, who are all world. And I have a couple circulating nurses who then manage, if you will, the circulating nurse is the tactician. The scrub nurse is my main trimmer, in sailing. And I would never make a decision about our OR environment without talking to them. Obviously, the stakes in the operating room are much higher than on a sailboat, but the principles are exactly the same. We leave absolutely nothing to chance. We have incredible preparation, and then we try to do everything the same all the time. But my circulating nurse needs to have all the equipment that we need there. I work with the same nurse anesthetists and anesthesiologists every single day. They know exactly what their job is. And the nurse who hands me the instruments, the scrub nurse or the scrub tech, same exact thing. But anyway, so many analogies between sailing, life, and what we all do for work.
You talked about preparation and mentioned that we interviewed Gary Jepson just like this. And he talked about how preparation is so key, especially when you get into America's Cup races. And you know, even the Grudge race today or the Newport Bermuda race, preparation. Tell us about prepare that surgical team to go into an OR and be at their very, very best. And maybe some lessons that you've learned from sailing that has helped you in the OR.
Well, I think in the operating room we have fewer numbers of people, but when preparation is still the same. I think one of the reasons we do well out here, even though we're all amateurs, the reasons we do well is we all have our own jobs. So if I'm driving the boat, I drive the boat. I don't try to also talk about where we're going. So we have a dedicated tactician. Jim handles that, and Jim decides on tacks and jibes. You know, there may be some debate and discussion about it, certainly, but if a decision needs to be made quickly, then one person makes that decision, and then everyone else knows their position on the boat to make sure that the sails go up and down correctly. In the operating room, I think it's a little bit different in that we don't have to prepare for weather, so we can prepare further in advance than the day before or 2 days before, which is needed because obviously the weather can change. But I outline the plan of every operation in a very detailed fashion, and that's available in the medical record. So when I see the patient before their operation, I actually dictate my note in front of the patient, so they know exactly what I'm going to do. It contains a lot of anatomic details that the patient may not understand, but for the anesthesiologist, for the surgeons helping me, and for the nurses, it's critically important. And then in the operating room, once the patient comes in, we actually do what's called a timeout, which was my first boat was named after what we do in the operating room. So we have a frozen moment. So I prefer to do that after the patient goes to sleep. So the patient's put to sleep by the anesthesiologist, and then before we start preparing them for surgery, where we put an antiseptic solution on if I'm operating on the abdomen. Before we do that, we pull up the CT scans. We pull up the medical record. We have huge video screens in every operating room. We have a camera in the light that's over the operating room. So we pull up those CT scans. We go back over everything, and we then go around the room. And every person, we ask if they're prepared. Do they have any concerns? Are there any? So I ask the anesthesiologist, is everything exactly as you want it? Do you have any concerns at all? You know, talk to my nurses. Do we have all the equipment? You know, we talked about the equipment. Is everything here? And that's really the part of the timeout. Usually as part of the timeout, I also give one or two personal anecdotes about the patient so that everyone in the room knows that this is a person. Because obviously we operate on people every day. And it's very easy for us to just say, okay, we're taking another thyroid out, or we're going to do a Whipple operation or something like that. I want them to know that this is someone's mom or dad, this is someone's brother or sister. And so that I usually give an anecdote that, you know, that this person happens to be CEO of a manufacturing company that makes plastics in Minneapolis or wherever, just so that everyone has one little anecdote. then we start the operation. And I think we talk about, there's always another surgeon working with me, so it's a minimum of 2 surgeons, usually a resident, and then my scrub nurse at the operating room table. And we're talking about the steps in the operation as we go. And similar to sailing, I think, especially when you're doing 6-7 hour operations that are at times sometimes high risk, the best way to have a good outcome is to stay out of trouble. And I think the same thing is true on the race course in sailing, right? And I'm very much an amateur, unlike the people that you normally talk to about sailing. But the best results are usually when you stay out of trouble. And the same thing is true in the operating room. And in the operating room, I tend not to have music, tend to talk about the steps of the operation all the time. And I think as you evolve into a better sailing team, like if you're on our boat now, I think our boat does pretty well. There's not a lot of chit chat on the boat. I mean, we're talking about the race pretty much all the time. And today it was light wind, and I think the people even though we had 6 or 7 people on the rail, they're talking about where the wind is. Yeah. They're talking about where our competition is. And I think having people with their mind in the game all the time also gives you better results. I think the same thing is true at work. It's good to have a little levity, but to the extent that you can create the expectation that, that people, you want to get everyone to be the best they can be all the time, they just get into that mode. So
yeah, I loved hearing that. We talk a lot about steward leadership, being a steward of the people. That taking Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry Waymiller, who said, "My people aren't my people, but my people are someone else's son or daughter, mom or dad, brother or sister," just like you talk about your patient. And then having that attitude then kind of permeate the organization so that the people treat the rest of the people in their lives better. And it seems that's what you're building as a culture with your surgical teams, and a super care for the patient and as a steward of their health. That's just amazing here. One final question, if you will. We talk a lot about positive conflict. I know the boats that I currently race on, sometimes there's conflict. And you mentioned that sometimes there's conflict on your boat, not as much as probably other boats. We teach, as long as we're focusing on, within our organizational full sail, as long as we're focusing on mission, vision, values, ideas, and issues, we're always going to have, or mostly have, positive conflict. How do you manage conflict within your practice or within your surgical teams?
You've hit on probably the hardest element, and I think here the analogy to sailing, we didn't talk about this before, but the analogy to sailing is just so great. Because I think the protest in sailing, in the racing rules of sailing, I think it's rule 60 or 61 or something, you probably know that, but this is a huge challenge today. I think we're in an environment right now where it's become relatively accepted and certainly politically correct to complain about an environment or to complain about a person or to have a conflict without necessarily bringing it forward in a healthy way. So in sailing, if you're on the race course and you think that you've been fouled, so we have starboard port and windward leeward and everything else. So you think you've been fouled, you have to, number one, hail protest. And then if you're concerned that the boat isn't close enough to you and hasn't heard it, you have to fly a red flag. So then the person who has fouled you, and you can draw this analogy to life, the person who's offended you knows it. They know about it, and they have the opportunity to say, "I'm sorry." And on the race course, "I'm sorry" is either doing one circle or usually doing 2 circles. So if someone is watching this video and they don't know anything about sailing, we're trying to go from point A to point B, and you have to turn the boat in 2 circles. You still have to do that twice. Obviously, that slows you down from getting to point B. But the great thing about this is that the person who has been fouled has to yell protest. So last night, for example, we were fouled on the starting line. We had rights. It was a downwind start, so it's a little confusing. But a boat came in when they didn't have rights. I had to alter my course, so I yelled protest. We opened up the flag on our backstay. They mumbled some grumpy disagreement, but we said, we're protesting you. Now you have the option of doing a couple circles or, take your chances in the protest room. But if you lose the protest in the protest room, you're going to get the number of sailed boats +1. So it's a big risk. So they did their 2 circles. And I think they came in 4th or 5th rather than what would have been 9th if they had lost a protest. In the workplace, right now, we're in an era when you can, in the effort of making the environment comfortable for everyone, virtually every corporation now has a reporting mechanism whereby someone can fill out a written report that they have been offended. Either Dr. Evans raised his voice to me, or did something of that magnitude, yet without the needed messaging to the person who offended them, to at least say, I thought that you raised your voice then, and that really was not good for the team dynamics, or what you said, the fact that you used language that I just found somewhat offensive, whether it be related to gender, race, ethnicity, anything like that. I think we have to create in the workplace right now some level of comfort with expressing ourselves. And I think what I've tried to do, especially in our Department of Surgery, is to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable disagreeing. Everyone feels comfortable calling someone else on a comment that they may have made that may be offensive to someone, so that we then can really have an environment where people can express themselves. And I think there's that Rule 60 or 61 in the Racing Rules of Sailing, which says you have to express yourself if you've been offended, I think is just so important to the workplace, because some level of disagreement, some level of confrontation, I think is important. Obviously in healthcare, we have 2 areas that can be high stress. And I would make this different than, what we're doing in sailing is, while it can be stressful, it's not life or death. Right. In medicine and surgery, it can be life or death. Yeah. And, Mark DeMoya, when he oversees someone coming into the trauma bay, at the end of the day, he's in charge. And if there's a question, if he has to say, we're doing this. The blood pressure is low. I think the problem's in the chest. I need the sternal saw. I'm going to open the chest. And there needs to be an environment where people can say, well, Mark, I'm not so sure you're right. And that discussion can occur for 2 or 3, maybe for 20 seconds or so. But it can't occur too long. Right. Someone has to make the decision. When I'm in the operating room, if we have a situation where there's a hole in a big blood vessel, now I've done this for a long time, so I pretty much know what to do, but I can put my finger on the hole. Anesthesia can catch up, can make sure that the blood pressure. I'll ask everyone around the room, do we have everything we need? This is how we're going to fix this problem. And then if anyone has a difference of opinion, that is the time to bring that difference of opinion forward. So,
Well, Doug, I appreciate your time, and I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I can see why people want to work for you and why MCW's department that you lead is so successful, because you're an amazing leader. You're a great sailor. I love watching your boat on Wednesday nights when we're sailing around you in the Jam division instead of your division. So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks,
Appreciate
Tim.
it.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.